So for this week's module, I wanted to talk about, since I'm a middle school education teacher, and what goes behind students and their brain development during middle school. And the brain growth during this time gives students the ability to problem solve, think critically, plan, and control their impulses. This developmental cycle, it also impacts short-term memory. So middle school students can generally retain 5 to 7 bits of information at a time. So when teachers try to cram too much into a lesson, it doesn't really work for them. But the more engaged and rich the new material is, the more likely that the new information will be retained. So more like quality instead of quantity, right? So, teachers have known that memorization leads to a material gap and stuff is, forgotten very easily. But new research in neuroscience it's starting to highlight the importance of strategies that we can take as teachers to retain the knowledge and really make it stick. In a recent article in Neuron Magazine, neurobiologists, which I didn't even know was a thing, they challenge memory and in a way that it's like gradually washing away critical information despite our best efforts as teachers to help them retain it. It said that the goal of memory is not just to store information accurately, but to optimize the decision making in a chaotic, quickly changing environment. So that's our job as teachers, is to be sure that students have that ability, and in turn, it will affect their memory. The writers of the article, Richards and Franklin, they said from this perspective, forgetting is not necessarily a failure of memory. Rather, it represents an investment in more optical mnemonic strategy. So in other words, what it's saying is, just like our brains, whatever we don't use, we're going to get rid of, right? But it helps us to retain it when we use it in everyday situations, right? We all know that learning something new, our brain encodes it, and then it goes across neuron networks and it converts into experience. It converts to an experience in our memory. Well, Hermann, I'm going to get this wrong, Ebbinghaus discovered this in the 1880s, and he observed what he calls the forgetting curve. And it's a measure of how much we forget over time. In his experiments, he discovered that without any reinforcement to the material that we learned, that connections to the previous knowledge, right? Information is quickly forgotten. 56% of it's forgotten within an hour, 66% the day after, and 75% after 6 days. So how do we fix this, right? There's a couple of ways we can do that. But first, I want to tell you how I can relate this to me. Because it was about 20 years since I had gone to school, and here I went back to college. And one of my science professors always, before you left class, don't forget to read over this tonight. Then you'll look over it once again, and then we'll go over it when we meet again. That's 3 times. When you hit information 3 times, you're more likely to retain it. Well, sure enough, right? I hit it 3 times, and sometimes I even went to tutoring, and I did it. So the way teachers can do this, especially in the middle school, high school realm, peer-to-peer explanations. And we all know, being in a technology field, videos are awesome. When students can explain their learning, you've hit the jackpot. Review and practice again and again. So have students make study stacks or Quizlets and have them go, we can play a game of Kahoot. It boosts retention. Interleaving, and I knew what this was, but I didn't really know the term, and it means don't group like questions. So when you're giving students opportunity to revisit the material, don't use the same questions or like questions in a same group, because we want to create that deeper learning, and you'll do that if you kind of spread the questions out. You want to mix text and images. And this goes back to the information processing theory, where we better learn things when we have different ways of bringing it in. So whether you use, a variety of multimedia. So you've got audio, you've got visual, you've got hands-on, all types of different opportunities. So as teachers, we really need to think about this. We need them to explain their learning. We need to boost retention, get that deeper learning by interleaving, and we want to mix text and images.